It's the Cannon Sports Podcast. On today's episode, we're joined by the head football coach of Orange Lutheran High School, Rod Sherman. Welcome in, everybody, to the Cannon Sports Podcast from Orange Lutheran High School down here in Orange County, California. I'm Phil George, and our guest today, he's the head coach of the Orange Lutheran football program, the 2021 CIF Southern Section Division-2 champion Orange Lutheran football program, Coach Rod Sherman.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate you having me on.
Coach, welcome to the show. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Rod Sherman. Just completed my first season back at Orange Lutheran. Had spent some time here previously and had the privilege to come back and work with a great group of young men and assemble a staff and get through our first year. Hopefully make some impact on those kids that were here, and we're in the summer getting ready for year 2 in our second season.
Well, we're happy to have you with us today. If you haven't already, please make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to get all into your life and your career as a coach, but want to start off with your most recent accomplishment. We said at the top of the show that Southern Section Division-2 championship you guys won. First of all, congratulations on that. If you would, just go ahead and give us a recap of last season and all the different things that went into making you guys the championship caliber team that you ultimately became.
We had great kids and great families that bought in. We started late when you think about, I was hired in early to mid-May. I think it was the second week of May when we had our first meet and greet with the parents and the players. And then I was living in Colorado with my family at the time. Spent a while commuting back and forth. Got to hire a staff. I think we had our first staff meeting in mid-June, probably the third week of June, and started assembling everything. Had the fortune to be able to hire Aaron Corp. It was a really cool experience for me. Of when I was here previously at OLu, Aaron was our quarterback. Spent a lot of nights at my house. We had another senior quarterback that year, Billy Vinovich. It's a great young man. And Aaron went and played at USC in Richmond, came back as a coach to the college level. And then I had the privilege to hire him back here. So as Aaron, he was, I think, my first hire, and then we started assembling a staff. By the time we got the staff assembled, got our practice outline set, I think our first practice was something like July 1st. So it was a pretty quick turnaround into the fall season. And I'm so thankful for the young men in the program, for the parents that bought into what we were trying to accomplish, bought into the values that we were trying to inculcate in the lives of our players. And kind of started with our non-conference schedule and then went through the gauntlet of the Trinity League. And I think as a program, we learned some lessons there. We learned through some hard times. We learned through some successes. And I thought we played our best football at the end of the year. And I'm so proud of the young men for what they accomplished to come off a season that they had had before, shortened with COVID, and was a difficult time for them. And then it's just so cool as a coach to watch kids experience success and to see their faces light up and to see them gain confidence. And we were just able to get that as a season went and progressed. And we played some good football at the end of the year, and we're able to be crowned the D2 champs for CIF. So.
And we could probably spend an entire show talking about that championship game. But for those watching who didn't see that game and don't necessarily know what happened in it, talk about how that game played out and the just incredible comeback that your team orchestrated to take home the title.
Alemany is an exceptional program. When we started watching them on film, they were a Trinity League caliber team. I think at the end of the year, they probably ended up with 13 to 16 Division I football players that were on that team, and they were really big up front. Their DBs and receivers were incredibly athletic, tailback, and early on, they got the better of us. They were playing some man coverage, or a lot of man coverage on the back end with all Pac-12 SEC DBs. But we had some guys step up and make plays. And the cool thing for us was we had some guys step up and make plays that hadn't been the same guys that had stepped up the previous week, when we were fortunate to beat a really good Sierra Canyon team, Hayden Faraday as a wide receiver, he had 2 touchdown catches in that. And just awesome to see the joy on his face, to watch kids that you knew could make plays. When the phone rang, so to speak, they answered it in the championship game. Had a couple of huge defensive stops. Capitalized on some turnovers. So it was a great game. It was as loud as could be there. And to just watch the joy and excitement for our entire school community. I think it had been a while since our school community had felt that level of excitement. So it was cool to live in that.
To have the season that you had had to that point and go as far as you did, making such a deep run into the postseason, getting that close and then going into halftime with such a large deficit, what was the mood like in that locker room, and how were you able to rally your team to get beyond that deficit and orchestrate that comeback?
Yeah, I don't think I always model this well as a coach, and I think it's a growth area for me, but the concept of like, relax, right? What did we learn? What can we adjust? What can we grow and improve is an important thing. And again, I'm trying to grow as a coach in that, where the players look at your head coach and they see, okay, we're going to make some adjustments. How are those adjustments going to play themselves out in the second half? How are we going to continue to put one foot in front of the other, play with passion, play with great effort, execute, and anticipate that the ball's going to bounce in our direction a little bit. And we had a couple of plays that guys made that just were great individual plays, and it started to play itself out on the football field as the momentum started to change. So I think if we can be a program that, right, you don't always in football want to be focused on the scoreboard. You don't always want to be focused on, are we going to win or lose? But like, how are we just going to have long obedience in the same direction to our values, to playing hard, to play for your brother? And as you do those things, can that even out the momentum? And it did for us in that game. And I was really proud of our guys for their perseverance in the way we accomplished that.
And you're no stranger to winning championships. You won 3 state titles in Colorado. We'll get to more on that later. But in terms of winning a championship when dealing with such adversity like you guys did in that game, does it make it that much sweeter to come back like you guys did?
Yeah. As a coach, what makes winning sweet is looking at your players and seeing joy in their face. And I think some of our guys had felt like, man, Orange Lutheran doesn't get respect from a football standpoint, right? Like when you compete in the league that we're in, it's easy to start doubting yourself of, am I good enough? Am I quality enough? Do I matter? And to see as a coach, joy, confidence, success in the face of your players, that's why you coach. We had a coaching staff meeting, and I said, guys, I don't want you to wear your championship rings as coaches, because if we as coaches coach to get a championship ring, this is high school football, right? Like, we should be coaching to help our players accomplish their goals and help these young men become great men, great fathers, great husbands, great leaders in whatever venture it is they want to do. That should be why we coach, right? We can't always, or we should never focus on, are we going to win that high school state championship, right? Like, let's focus on the process. Let's not worry about the end point of that journey and that destination. We're going to be a lot happier keeping our eyes fixed on that process.
Now, is that a mindset that you believe that most coaches have, and especially the coaches on your staff, or is that something that you had to kind of instill in them?
I think that's my responsibility as head coach and leader. I have been fortunate to be a part of many championship teams. And what that means is we had really good players. We had really good families that bought into what we were trying to do. To be able to or a coach here with Jim Kuna, who was our former head coach, and be a part of 3 championship programs here. And yeah, when we were in Colorado, we had a lot of success. I think we won 7 out of 8 state championships. But the thing we tried hard to do was to not make it about that, right? To make it about growth, to make it about development, to make it about improvement. In 2015, we lost in the state championship game. I'm sorry, it was 2014. We lost by 1 point, and we had won, I think, 5 or 6 in a row, and we lost that one. And the reality was, I woke up the next morning. All our players woke up the next morning. Life was going to be okay. And I made a commitment to myself and to my wife that if after a win, after a day or two, I hadn't come down, or on the flip side, if we lost a game and I was still in the dumps a day or two after that, it probably meant that winning had too big of a hold in my heart and that I probably wasn't doing it for the right reasons. That doesn't mean we're not competitive, right? But you can be competitive, and as a man or as an adult, you can learn to be competitive and to keep things in balance. And I think that's my job as head coach after a huge win, to remember to level the ground, to remember to tell guys, hey, right, like it's a short trip from the penthouse to the outhouse. Let's keep everything in perspective. But at the same time, after a loss, to also say, hey guys, the sun's going to rise tomorrow morning. Sun's going to rise in the east as it does every day. We're going to be okay. And to not get on the roller coaster, but to stay on the platform, so to speak. My wife learning that as parents of it. Sometimes kids want to get on the roller coaster. And what do we as mature parents need to strive to do? Stay on the platform, stay even keel. And I feel like kids need to see that from me as their head coach. And again, I'm not always great at it. And I'm probably, my wife keeps me balanced. She would probably tell you I'm bad at it way more than I'm good at it. But can our coaches see that in me too? And can they see energy and passion and excitement, but a calmness and an even keel of life's going to be okay?
Now, I think it's interesting bringing up that conversation that you have with your wife and how she helps to keep you balanced. So much of the role of being a football coach is being that support system for the young men on your team. But, you know, we're all human. We all need support systems too. How important is that to have that support system for you and your wife and your family and those things that help to keep you grounded and in that mindset?
It's unbelievable. I think we all in our lives need people that are going to speak truth to us. My wife over the last year or two has been working with me to help me recognize that feedback is your friend. And in my role, administrative role here as director of enrollment and leading parent surveys and some of the things we're trying to do here as a school, to recognize that when people give you feedback, they're not doing that because they don't like you. They're doing that to help you grow long term. So when my wife can give me that feedback, when she can, early on this year, we sat down, we try to make a commitment to have a date night every week, just so that we can keep our marriage vibrant and that we can stay in communication and make sure we're keeping our priorities set. That she looked at me, she goes, I don't know if you're having fun coaching. I don't know if you're enjoying what you're doing, and why is that? And obviously these are big transitions to move your family here from another state. And I needed her to speak truth to that. And I needed her to help balance me out. And she knows when I get too emotional with it and when I need to be calmed down of it's going to be okay, or trying to grow in my body language so kids see how much I love them and care about them. And I think earlier in my career, I would make excuses. Football's a passionate game. And like, that's still an excuse. So how can I find a way as a head coach for my interactions with young men to be for their benefit and to be positive and to still hold them accountable through positive interactions? And where does that accountability come from? It probably has to come from people that are closest to us, whether that's a close friend, whether our athletic director is exceptional. For me, I'm blessed that a lot of that can come from my wife and my family. So both from the support standpoint as well as the polishing or sharpening to make us better in what we do.
Well, it sounds like your wife is deserving of a championship ring herself.
She's wonderful.
Let's go ahead and get into some of your previous experiences in coaching. As we talked about, this is not your first tenure at Orange Lutheran. You previously served on staff here from 1997 to 2007, and you were also the athletic director. Serving as athletic director while simultaneously being on the coaching staff, what sort of insight does that provide you that maybe some of your peers who were strictly in coaching without that administrative experience didn't have?
Yeah, we talked a little bit ago about perspective, and I think that has helped be able to balance me out. First, as a young athletic director, I look back and I think about some of the mistakes I made as a young AD, and I made plenty. I was our AD here that went from the beginning of my tenure. We were in the Olympic League with a bunch of smaller Christian schools, and for 4 years we were in the Empire League and then in the Trinity League, kind of trying to grow in my leadership as our school grew into that. I look back at so many mistakes that I made, and I'm thankful that people either forgot or they're forgiving. I don't know which one. But that I always thought it was important that as an AD, when I was sitting down with a coach, I was empathetic to what they were going through, and that I understood, oh man, this is probably a difficult time based on this going on or where your team is at. And I thought it was important that the coach knew that I was one of them and that I was speaking out of experience. Learned a while ago about the types of power, of positional power, relational power, and experiential power. And I had even though I had positional power, right? If you use positional power very often, you're not a very effective leader. And I thought it was important to have experiential power, to just talk to coaches and to learn from some great coaches we had here about, oh man, how did you handle this team dynamic? I've got another coach in another sport that's struggling with that. So I wanted to learn about that. I think the flip side is true as a coach, to have an administrative background, which helps you recognize just a bigger picture, right? I think it helped me understand we want the parents to be supportive of what we're doing. So where some programs want to push parents to the side and say, like, man, you guys are only going to cause me problems. I believe through being an administrator, what I saw was programs where the parents are aligned with the coaching staff, the kids have greater deliverables for the kids. You're able to embed your core values more. There's more partnership. So why, as a coach, shouldn't we invite the parents in more and try to be more proactive in our partnership? I think having a different lens gave me an additional perspective for that. So I think being able to serve in multiple roles has just helped broaden my perspective. I make just as many mistakes as the next guy or more, but at least it allows you to look at situations from different lens. Being a parent now, I have 4 kids, 2 of them go to Orange Lutheran. I'm able now to look through the lens of other parents to see, right, talking to early in my coaching career, I made the edict, I will not talk about playing time with a parent. Well, being a parent, it's important sometimes, right? And I can see when my kid is hurting in an activity they're involved in because it hasn't played out the way they wanted to. Why would I not sit down and talk to that parent and just have open and honest dialogue, get feedback from them? Maybe they'll ask me for feedback from me because that's what's in the best interest of their kid. And I don't know if I hadn't had kids and been a parent, or if I wouldn't have other experiences, if I would have gotten to be well-rounded, to be able to look at issues from different perspectives. So I think that's where that helps you. It's kind of like the spokes on a wheel, right? The more spokes you have, the more well-rounded they are, the better the wheel's going to run. So I look for some of those experiences in life to help round out where I'm currently at, to help me lead better, hopefully, in the long run.
When you finally got beyond that original edict of, I won't have a conversation about playing time with a parent, when you finally got to a point where you were willing to have that conversation, that's a difficult conversation to have. How do you do that in a way that is productive and, maybe share some things with the parent that are not very, that they may not want to hear, but do so in a way that they're receptive to it and they accept it?
Yeah, that's a tough question. And like I said, I don't know that I've always had that figured out. I think it's important to have the athlete in the room to be able to truly have transparent and honest dialogue, and to be able to get the athlete to speak more, right? Because what I know in every one of those situations, the parent at some level wants the student to grow. So if the student's not in that room, there can be no growth for the student. So to be able to follow some protocols, and that might be, hey, the player wants to talk to their position coach, and as issues escalate. But to really, what I hope for in those situations is the discernment to keep my mouth shut enough, right? And discernment to allow the parent or the player to tell us what could have been done differently. What are you feeling? And then hopefully to ask them if it's okay if we share a little bit from our standpoint of, here's what we see, here's what we experience. I think earlier on, as a younger coach, I was going to make sure to bring that up no matter what. Now I think if you got to read the room of, there's no value in going down that path if someone's not interested in hearing that, right? And to be able to find a common and a safe space to get to the point in conversation where you can get to some really honest and transparent dialogue. I used to start parent meetings with me wanting to get the first word in. And you realize, for me, that was an immaturity. That was a pretty immature coaching, because it meant I had to be in control versus allowing someone else to go first, right? To meet on their turf, to say, tell me about how you're feeling. And then they can articulate those issues first, and then can I respond to them? And right, like we all as humans, we might have to challenge ourselves to respond in a way that is mature and going to help advance this conversation. But I think those are some practical things that we've tried to do, because at our core values here are love, accountability, passion, and toughness. And if we can get to the common ground of, do you know that we love your kid? Okay, that's an important piece of that common ground. Are we all in agreement that we want what's best for your kid long term? Yes. Can we agree that we might be looking through this situation at different filters? You might only be looking at it of what's best for your kid. I might have to look at it through multiple filters of what's best for our program, what's best for our current team, what's best for your kid. And those might have conflicting values or conflicting outcomes to those. So if we can pull all of that together and do the hard work of just being in relationship together.
Well, it sounds like you found a really great way to strike that balance and communicate that message in an effective way. Moving on to your next stop at Valor Christian in Colorado, we talked a little bit about the success that you had there. I want to talk about one athlete in particular that you had the pleasure of coaching during your time there, and that was a young football player named Christian McCaffrey. We can get into his accolades, but before we do that, just what do you remember about your experience coaching such a talented player in McCaffrey?
Yeah, I remember we put Christian offensively, defensively in a bunch of different situations. What I can remember is he was our best player on that team, in those teams. He was our best leader, and he was our hardest working player. And I think when those three things align, you got yourself something pretty special. When we would use Christian as a receiver, if he didn't feel absolutely comfortable with the way he was running a route at a water break, before practice, after practice, he wouldn't leave the field until it's almost like he had a mental Rolodex of, I don't run this post out very well right now. Which he probably ran it really well, right? But he didn't in his own mind feel like that was perfect. He would come back, he would practice it. He couldn't walk off the field unless he knew, got it. And it was just a great lesson to watch a young man make sure that he could do everything exceptionally well that he was asked to do on the football field.
Yeah, you spoke to his versatility. He played running back, wide receiver, cornerback, and he even punted. When you have an athlete with that diverse of a skill set and somebody who does so many things at such a high level, how do you coach a player like that in order to make sure that you're getting the absolute best out of him in all areas?
Christian was, we tried not to overuse Christian. We wanted him to have a long, successful career. We knew he was special. I want to say that in his high school career, and he played on varsity for 4 years and had a lot of really, really good games. I think he only touched the ball more than 17 times, 4 different games, because he was special. But we also weren't going to just get in the I formation or hand him inside zone 35 times a game and get him beat up. And our teams were good and we had good quarterbacks and we wanted to spread that out. We also wanted to grow his giftedness. So I remember going into his junior year, he didn't need more work on running inside zone, outside zone. All spring, we played him as a wide receiver. And I'm certainly not saying that doing that has helped him catch the ball as a reason he's such a good receiver. But our goal was, how do we take, obviously, a generational talent and still challenge them where they feel like there's more to learn and more to do, where when they come out to practice, it's not just drudgery. It's not just, I can already do everything out here. It's like, okay. So we felt like spending 3-4 weeks only playing wide receiver would hopefully help develop other areas and grow other areas where it kept him attuned to where he needed to go, and it kept growing his him as a football player. So we were really fortunate. I was blessed to be at the Heisman ceremony and to watch some of Christian's greatest successes, and he really blessed us in our culture.
Now, obviously, everybody knows the kind of NFL player that he turned into with the Carolina Panthers, and you mentioned the Heisman ceremony. Everybody remembers him being the Heisman runner-up at Stanford. Now, you would think that a player like that coming out of high school would be 5-star caliber, #1 recruit in the nation, but he wasn't. He was a 4-star recruit, the 91st ranked player nationally. And listen, that's certainly nothing to scoff at. And several of the players above him did go on to have standout college and pro careers in their own right. Leonard Fournette, Myles Garrett were the top 2 players in that recruiting class. But, for him to have been positioned where he was, 4 stars, not 5, ranked number 91, and still turned out to have the amazing career that he has. What does that say to a young player about, maybe don't obsess over where you're rated and just focus on going out and playing your game, and good things will happen?
Christian wasn't a young man that cared about going to recruiting camps that were going to feed into his number of stars. He cared about getting better. I'm so thankful. He played 3 sports in high school. He was on the basketball team. That's funny. Similar to the way our offensive coordinator, Aaron Corp, he played basketball here. And I think at times society can tell young football players, you better play football all day, every day. You better find club 7-on-7 teams. You better go to all these recruiting camps. And is there some value in those things? Well, of course there is. But that's not the only way to do things. And Christian, we loved watching him go play basketball. We would encourage him as the football season, as we got into the playoffs, like, hey, you better get in the gym and get some shots up. And we would joke like, hey, see, we're going to go watch you in a few weeks hoop. I don't want to watch you throwing up bricks. Now, I still remember the week of our state championship game, being like, hey, Christian, get some shots up. We weren't encouraging him to go play 5-on-5 and turn his ankle, but he could go get some shots up. And there was enough time to do that. There was enough time for him to be a part of mission trips and to go serve. And his perspective was, he is very, very, very passionate about football, but he still ran track. And when he got back to football in the spring, he was motivated. He was excited. He wasn't worn out. And I think some of that probably affected how many stars and that ratings, but it probably also in a positive way affected how he was excited about football, how he wasn't burnt out. I think you see some guys in college that just get tired of football. And I hope here at OLu, and it's what we did at Valor, we can find a good balance between, to think about football 24/7. That's not healthy. It's not good for young people to think about anything 24/7. How do we find balance where you can continue to be excited and passionate about these things as you grow and mature?
You mentioned that you had the chance to be present at the Heisman Trophy ceremony in New York. What was that experience like?
It was pretty surreal. Have dinner the night before and after the Heisman with a few of the Stanford coaches and Christian and the McCaffrey family. I'll remember those times, and just being able to be in the theater with such an accomplished group. There's no one that's in that theater by chance. And when you're walking around, happened to be there with my brother-in-law and just in the lobby, and we were with Marcus Allen a little bit before, and you start thinking about those guys. The night before the Heisman, we were on a bus tour, and it was the three finalists, which was Derrick Henry, Deshaun Watson, and Christian, and their immediate family, doing a bus tour of New York. It was a pretty surreal experience for a football guy.
Well, and the fact that you received that invite from him to attend, and that was several years after he had graduated from your program. What does that say that he thought of you and asked you to attend? What does that say about the relationship that you guys had?
Yeah. There was a long legacy of, he had three brothers that all played for me as well. And it was exciting to be a part of that. And certainly I still follow his career now.
After your time spent coaching in Colorado, you eventually found your way back here to Orange Lutheran. And like we talked about, that represented a homecoming for you. Before we get into the strictly football element of it, how much does this community mean to you, and how special is it to put on that uniform and coach down here in Orange County?
Yeah, I mean, this is the mecca of high school football, with what programs have done around here. When I got the call from Mr. Brown to say if I'd be interested, I was in a great spot. I was at a public school in Colorado called Arapahoe High School, and I loved it there. It is hard to accept a position at the public schools later in life because that's not how their compensation, retirement, all those things are a little bit harder when you join the public school later. But when your alma mater calls you, I had the privilege of being a student here, of creating relationships here. I feel like I learned how to coach football here from Jim, Brent Wieselmeyer, who's in the NFL now, who was our first coach at Valor. Right? You always listen when your alma mater calls you, and it felt right for our family. We loved our time in Colorado, and we feel as though we were blessed tremendously when we were there. But now we have two children that are students here, and for my wife and I, we thought it was the right time for us to come back to Orange Lutheran. Obviously, it's hard to move back to California. There aren't a lot of people that do that, but we've been blessed in our little over a year back here. It's hard to think that my family didn't even move out here until the end of July last year. So it hasn't even been a full year that we've been out here as a family, and relationships take time, and acclimating back takes time. But we have really been blessed as a family and how we've grown together and what this year has brought for us.
We've had a few Trinity League coaches on this show, some of whom have, like you did, coached down here in the Trinity League, then spent time away before coming back. Troy Thomas is one of those coaches. He spent some time at Servite, then left for Crespi, ultimately coming back to coach at Servite. And one thing that he noted, as well as others, is that the league he came back to was a little bit different than the league that he left. Did you have that experience, and how has the Trinity League evolved in the time that you spent away from it?
I wasn't naive to what we were coming back to. Having friends that have been in this league, having friends that have coached in this league, and when your alma mater's in this league, you always keep an eye on it. But honestly, for me, I believed that I shared with the school what my vision would be for Orange Lutheran football. And I'm also okay if the school leadership comes to me and says, that's not our vision anymore. We want to do something different. I'm okay. I'm going to hold this open-handed, and when it's time for them to tap someone else and say, be in leadership, I'm okay with that. Is the training league different? Sure, it's different. Are the ways it's different always good for kids? I don't know. I guess time will be the ultimate judge of that. What I care about is, what are we doing here at Orange Lutheran to love kids, to feed into their passion for football, to teach them about that balance, to help them have opportunities past high school, and if football is part of that, that is awesome. That's what I'm going to spend my time focused on. And right, we're probably going to win some games, we're going to lose some games, but are we going to grow our program and grow our young men to help them accomplish their goals?
So the state of the team upon your arrival, they had previously gone 1-3 in the abbreviated 2020 season and had been under 500 the previous couple of seasons, and obviously dealing with the weight of the COVID-19 pandemic, as you know, as really all of us in America and all over the world were in one respect or another. Describe the general state of the program upon your return, both from a football standpoint and a morale standpoint, and what were some of the immediate things that you set out to do when you first returned?
Yeah, I've learned when you take over a program, to worry about the past is not a fruitful venture for you, versus to cast a vision of where you're going and spend all your time and energy focused on that. The old phrase about comparison being the thief of joy, I found to be totally true. I'm glad my wife wasn't married before me, because she would have way higher expectations of me as a husband. But like, there was no reason for me to say, like, guys, here's how you did it in the past. Here's how we're going to do it. I spent time trying to talk to guys about, hey, what were some of the great things that you did in the last couple of years that you'd want me to continue to do, and to honor the players in that, right? Because if we want to be a program that's player-centric, then you let players lead. Then you ask players what are things that they appreciated doing, what were good team bonding things that they did that we could continue. And that's all we tried to do. We laid out our 4 core values, as I shared with you earlier, and just said, what can we do daily to grow that in the hearts of our young men? I did ask them at the very beginning. I said, guys, just because we play in the Trinity League, I don't think that we need to use the F-bomb, right? I don't know that using profanity is going to make us a more physical football team. I had the privilege of coaching, she was probably a decade ago now, or a little less, with Brian Dawkins, who's in the NFL Hall of Fame. You would never find him using a profane word. And I promise you, you wouldn't have wanted to be a wide receiver coming across the middle against him. That's why he's in the NFL Hall of Fame. But he challenged our guys. Just because we're playing a physical game, why does our language have to change? He goes, it didn't for me in the NFL. And I've always held on to that. So to challenge our guys, right? So not to say, hey, I don't know what was done in the past. I don't know what was done here in all elements of the football program, but I want my kids to be able to be out here. I want other little brothers to be able to out here. They should be able to be in our locker room without hearing profanity. Cast the vision of where we're going and remind guys of why that's important. So that's what we did, versus worry about, like, how's the culture feeling? Man, how can we help all these young men accomplish their goals? And let's go.
And specifically with regard to language, I'll just ask you point blank, why is that important? Because obviously if you spend any amount of time on a football field, in the locker room, you're going to hear F-bombs, and you're probably going to hear a lot worse. Why, in your opinion, is that something that is important to eliminate, regardless of how common it is anywhere else? And what effect does that have? And what does it say about your program to be a program that doesn't engage in that kind of language?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's going to slip, mess up. But I think I learned from a principal here. His name was Greg Pinnock. And he taught me as a young leader that the language people use is an overflow of what's going on in their heart. And is that true in any time of when a kid uses that language? Can we teach them, like, hey, there's other ways to get your point across that might be valuable when you're going to be in a job interview, that might be valuable when you're at the dinner table? And why is it that sometimes we feel like anything goes on the football field? And I don't think it has to be that way. I've coached with multiple guys who played in the NFL that were some of the toughest guys. A friend of mine, Travis, who won 2 Super Bowls with the Steelers. He's a defensive lineman. I don't think you would have wanted to make him angry and cross him. But why did that have to equate to mother effing kids? And from our coaches, right? Like, that's totally unacceptable. We didn't get into coaching, I don't think, to motivate kids through swearing and name calling. There's other ways to do it. We talked with our team a couple weeks ago about, in today's world, I think there's a lot of divisiveness anywhere you look, right? There's political divisiveness, there's racial divisiveness. And can we as a program make sure that our language isn't creating divisiveness? Right? Well, we're at a school, we're trying to model Jesus. Well, what does that mean in that regard of demonstrating love to our teammates, right? Our first core value is love. If a coach tells a kid, you're an effing blah, blah, I don't think that is modeling love, and that's our core value. So that's important here. But again, we just want to continue to have a high standard and ask kids, we believe that you can achieve that standard.
Well, showing love, modeling Jesus, that leads perfectly into another thing that I wanted to talk about. You spoke a little bit ago about really placing an emphasis on team bonding. And there's one activity in particular that I wanted to talk to you about, and that was an outing that you guys had at Bolsa Chica State Beach. Tell us what you did for your team bonding activity that had a deeply religious connotation.
Yeah, actually, I'll probably share, if I can, about what we're planning a week and a half from now. We found when we went to Colorado, Brenton Wieselmeyer, who I referenced earlier, unbelievable coach, unbelievable guy. He was the head coach. He was the defensive coordinator here. He's an alum of OLu. When I got hired in Colorado, I got hired as athletic director. I hired Brent to be the head coach. Brent ran the defense. I ran the offense. And we partnered, and I worked for him in football and learned so much from him over the years. Probably our second or third year, we got some good feedback from parents that we could grow relationally within the program. Our coaches and our players could grow relationally. Our players could grow relationally amongst themselves. So we came up with this idea of a team retreat, that we would take our players out, not worry about football, and just grow together. It ended up being a great thing. And when we did it for years in Colorado, I did it at the private school, I did it at the public school we were at. And last year when I got here, we got here late. There was still some COVID stuff. So we couldn't do an overnight. So we did a night team retreat at the beach. Later this month, we're going to do a 4-day retreat with our older guys, and we'll do a little bit of football. We're going to go up and throw against Clovis West and practice with them, practice with De La Salle. And then we're going to do a multi-day rafting trip. Part of our rafting trip will be a foot washing ceremony where, and again, with our first core value being love, one of the ways Jesus demonstrated love to his disciples was he washed their feet. And he was trying to I believe that he was demonstrating service and how you serve each other. And he was modeling that Jesus, right, that he himself washed the feet of his disciples. Why can't we humble ourselves to do that for others? So we'll do that. We did it last year. And just as a way of coaches washing seniors' feet going on down to show young men at the heart of happiness in life is service. And it's a modeling of service and using scripture as our basis for that. So we're really excited about our team retreat. And I hope the guys will get to know each other greater, that we'll do some different activities which will bring them closer together as a team. Most of the time when I've done exit interviews with players, the thing they've remembered most about their senior year or their junior year was the team retreat. And I think sometimes as coaches, we want to make it all about what happens on the field, right? And we want to be champions on the field. But doing those types of activities are actually going to make us a better football team than just every time we talk to our team, it's about X's and O's, it's about offense, defense, specials. There's time to grow in relationship with each other.
Well, and how have you found that activities like that with that religious connotation, simply beyond spending time together, having fun in the traditional way, you know, pizza and ice cream, going out and tossing a ball around, that added element of service, of a religious connotation, how does that translate into winning championships?
It enhances trust and it builds relationship and demonstrates love for each other. And at some point, right, love is the emotion that you want all of these young men to have in life, right? Because negative emotions are only going to last so long. But the things that we would all as adults do for people that we love are way stronger than the things we would do for people we don't like. So to take the football field and to know that we've grown the love and trust within our team, man, I think that's what we're trying to accomplish. And I think you see more of that. You watch or read about PJ Fleck and how he's trying to develop his culture, right? Those are important cultural attributes to embed in there. And we want to create lifelong memories through young men's participation in football. And none of that means that we don't want to be great when we take the field on Friday night. And to help our young men understand that what we don't want for them an either or. I'm going to be a high character young man or a good athlete. I'm going to be a college football player or a good student. What we want to do is create and situations for them. I can be a great high character young man and I can be an unbelievable football player and I can achieve academically to the best of my abilities. That we get the or out of life and we start building on the ands in life where they don't feel like they have to make a choice between success and that they can live in a life or be an abundant athlete that looks to draw success in many areas.
Yeah, exactly. Because the fact is, X's and O's, as valuable as they are only applicable on the football field, whereas these other lessons and values and experience, these are things that will carry on well beyond an athlete's playing career.
That's right. And as coaches, if we can help young men understand the big picture in that, right? And if we can keep focused on those big pictures of both athletic success and what that athletic success can help you learn to provide opportunities for the rest of your life, then I think we've hit something special on there.
Now, all of that said, you did make some changes on the football side. We talked at the top of the show specifically about one coach you brought in, and that was your offensive coordinator, Aaron Corp. Before we get into his contributions to last year's team and beyond, talk about the place that he has in the history books as a quarterback here at Orange Lutheran.
I mean, he should be in our Hall of Fame here, and I'm sure when the time's right, he will be. He was a California State Player of the Year, and more than that, he was a multi-sport. He played 3 different sports here. He's just a great young man. His family is aligned with OLu. His sister, I think, was 2 years younger than him. I might be off by a year, but I think was 2 years younger than him, was a Gatorade State Player of the Year in volleyball. And again, just a wonderful family. And Aaron is well known here on this campus. And I think the thing I love most about him is if you start talking about that in a room, he'll get up and leave because he wants to make sure it's never, ever about him. And that it's about the young men that he's coaching and their success. And right, like we're probably just drawn to people in our life that have that level of humility with how they live.
And with his arrival came a slightly different style of offensive play. Talk about the changes that he made on the offensive side of the ball and the effect that they had on the team's performance.
Yeah, I think it was 2000. when I took over here as offensive coordinator. I was defensive coordinator for 1 year in 99, and then I started as offensive coordinator. And from then all the way through, I had run the offense wherever I had coached at, whether it was here, Valor, or Arapahoe. This was a weird feeling to go into our first game and be like, man, I'm not running the offense. I ran the special teams here this last year. And as I look back, I grew so much this year offensively by learning from Aaron. And it was a good experience for me to see a young man who our roles were kind of reversed, right? Like going through high school, he was at our house. Kristen would make dinner and we'd be watching film and going over what we were going to do. And to see how he had been in different experiences, which grew his knowledge so much. I find myself even at a water break in practice being like, okay, now when you called this out of this formation, how did that make it easier for the quarterback? The reality was I never played football. I never played football when I was here at Orange Lutheran. I picked up football later in life and learned to love the sport. He's helped me understand more things from a quarterback's perspective and really enhanced my knowledge of the passing game with how it's set up, with how the quarterback has read progressions, outlet schemes, et cetera. And it's been really awesome for me to be able to be a student and to sit in install meetings and learn why. And still he gives me the opportunity to throw in some things and probably throw in some funky things and tweaks and some of those just to give us a different wrinkle. But I've learned so much from Aaron. It's been really cool.
So before we look ahead to the 2022 season, we obviously spoke about the incredible success that you guys had during your championship run last year, especially against the backdrop of the couple of seasons that preceded your arrival here. Now, this isn't the first time that you've led a program to a winning record after a couple of seasons where they didn't necessarily win as much as they would like to. At Arapahoe, you led the program to a winning record for the first time in several years prior to your arrival. When you enter a situation like that, how are you able to so quickly diagnose and treat some of those issues and lead such a quick turnaround without having the benefit of turning over the roster over a period of several years?
Like I said before, and those kids at Arapahoe were such good young men. They were just dying for someone to believe in them. They were dying for a coaching staff to come in and say, you're good enough. Like, you can do this. And I was so fortunate at Arapahoe that most of the coaches that were with me at Valor were also with me at Arapahoe. So we had the privilege there of coming in, of being a successful staff. So it helped our buy-in on the front end. But for a kid to buy in, right, if they know the coach really, truly cares about them in an authentic manner, the buy-in's a lot easier. And that's not the head coach, right? That is the overall staff that I want to get to know guys, that every coach has a small group that they're able to capture the hearts of those players. And yeah, when we started, did we have a lot here schematically to start putting in July 1st in order to play a really good Sarah team 7 weeks later? Yeah, we did. But I think our coaches did such an incredible job of balancing that with growing relationships, learning how to motivate guys, learning what guys' goals were so they knew how to help players accomplish those goals. And I think that's important when you start to set those standards, to live out those standards, but to really try to capture the hearts of those players so that they'll perform, right? And so that they know, coach has got my back here. We're going to figure it out. So when you hit turbulent times, they're not immediately blaming someone else. Yet as head coach, man, we didn't play very well against Servite this year. Whose fault is that? It's my fault, right? Who's in charge? I'm in charge. When the team doesn't play well, that's solely on me. I did very little to help us win those first couple games. That was our coordinators, that was our assistant coaches, but mostly it was the players, right? I was the guy that didn't do a very good job against Servite. They did a great job our first 5 games.
So all of that we've just spoken about leads into the 2022 season, which is a few weeks away. Give our viewers a preview of what they are going to see from the Lancers this season.
Man, I love our kids. They've worked so hard this offseason. We were blessed to play 5 weeks in the playoffs. It means our offseason was a little bit shorter. We didn't really able to start until January. But in August last year, we hired a new director of performance, and our performance coach, we call them performance coaches here. Some would call them strength coaches. They have done such an incredible job of taking each kid where they're at, setting goals for them, finding what they need to grow and improve on to have success. And Bubba Reynolds is our head there, and he has done an exceptional job. I feel like our strength far outpaces where I ever thought it could have been when we started in January. Schematically, we'll look pretty similar on offense, with the exception of our quarterback last year threw, I think, 47 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Excuse me, we've got some younger kids battling there. This year, we haven't made a decision yet because we want them to get as much competition as possible. At the line of scrimmage, I'm really excited about our defensive line. I feel like they're young men that have worked incredibly hard and just grown as a program. So I'm excited. I think last year we had a couple of really elite guys at the top. And I think this year we've got a really, really balanced football team. Obviously, we had a great tailback last year. Desmond had 55 catches, 1,500 yards. We've got some guys that we're going to do a little bit more by committee this year. And what we've challenged our guys is, how can we be the best possible team? And that we all know our assignment. We all do our assignment. We all play with great effort every play. So we're pretty excited to get going. And it just seems so different because we got spring practice in. We've had summer practice, where last year it truly was a sprint from day one until the very end, because we were installing things. We didn't have our whole playbook in when we started the season because there just wasn't enough time and space to get that all in before our first game. So we feel pretty far ahead of the curve this year, and hopefully we'll be a little bit more prepared as we get into the season.
You want to give us a scouting report on some of the players to watch out for this season? Obviously, two players in particular, your linebacker, Gabe Morin, wide receiver, Caleb Marshall. Those are two players that we're doing profiles on. You can find those on YouTube at Cannon Sports Media. But I know that there are several more beyond those two that are going to be key contributors to this team.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. The way we practice, we don't do a ton of weekend 7-on-7 tournaments. And I know some schools do more of that. We've tried to focus our program on, can we be a little more collegiate from a standpoint of, can we create an environment of competition at our practices where we are competing against each other? When we're doing team drills, it's 11-on-11, where every kid's getting coached up, whether you're supposedly the first string outside linebacker or the third string outside linebacker, that you're getting meaningful, valuable reps. We think kids get better at playing football by playing football. So we try to do that. And there's a lot of young guys that have the opportunity to play for us. I think there was a time at OLu over the 2019-20 seasons where they had fewer kids in those classes. So it's not, from a number standpoint, as large as our current sophomore freshman class. And we've had some really talented incoming kids come in. So I think at a lot of our positions, what we have right now is competition and depth. And that's a pretty cool place to be. It means we don't yet know, as we look at receiver positions, we've got seniors like Caleb Marshall, and Caleb can play all of the different positions. We may even line him up in the backfield some. Caleb is an incredible route runner, played some different positions for us last year, but now can play all 5 of the positions, has improved his burst so much, like just through his off-season speed and strength work. But Jackson Wang's a senior wide receiver, Conrad Hernandez, and we've got some younger receivers, Ethan Tidd, Dylan Ballard. We've got more pass-catching tight ends this year than we did last year, and AJ Ia, Anthony Keys, Bryce Schnabel. So we're going to be more balanced. Obviously, Jalen Lynch was an unbelievable go-to target last year for Logan. Malik Blackman, outstanding. right? Those guys were just super exceptional. I think when you look at us this year, we're a much more balanced offense. At quarterback, we've got some kids, they're still battling it out. And TJ Latif, John Gazaniga, both offered Pac-12 scholarships throughout the spring. Both going to be great football players. We haven't made a decision what we're doing at the quarterback position. And then playing some multiple guys at tailbacks, trying to find a giftedness of each player to see how we can put them in the best possible position defensively. Offensive line-wise, Nate Hale, Anoke Samita, Joe, formerly Corral, Joe Rodriguez. To have 3 returning starters from last year's team is pretty valuable. And we got a couple other kids that we're excited about that we think are going to give us some really quality offensive line. I think we might not be as one play explosive as we were in the playoffs, and whether that was Dez, Jalen, we're going to have to be a little bit better at staying ahead of the game, sustaining drives, etc. Defensively, as I mentioned, we really like our depth at defensive line. We think we're going to be pretty young there, but we have a lot of guys who we think can make really good plays, from Mason Johnson to Jaira Moe to Brady Shea, Ahmad Jennings, just a lot of really, really good football players. Keelan, that's only going to be a sophomore. So pretty excited about them. Gabe, you mentioned, is kind of our anchor defensively. This will be his 3rd year as a starting middle linebacker in the Trinity League, been 2-time first team All Trinity. Will play some tailback for us, is our field general, gets us aligned, is durable, is physical, has really improved his burst. I think when teams see him, they'll see a different level of closing speed. So I can't say enough wonderful things about Gabe. And we'll have some new players in the secondary. Both our safeties, though, Mania, Noah played and started for us last year. And then a couple new guys at corner, but we've got some young guys there. Ben Alafayo, Deuce Frierson will be a senior. Keon Washington had been hurt last year, didn't get a chance to play. Chris Maglong's only a junior. Some of those guys are going to really add some good depth to us at outside linebacker. Really a deep group for us. Noah Ely's just a freshman, but has really shown had his first Pac-12 offer before his first game of his freshman year, which is crazy. JoJo Edwards started every game for us last year. Rex Barrera started a ton of games for us. So we're feeling pretty deep there. So the best thing is that competition where guys are coming to work every day to figure out how we can be the best possible team.
Well, it sounds like a great foundation of talent as you guys look to defend your Division II title this year, and we want to wish you luck in that endeavor, and thanks for joining us on the show.
You bet. Really, I've watched a lot of your work and listened to it, and I appreciate what you do for high school sports and for coaches and just giving us an opportunity to grow and improve. So thank you, Phil.
Thank you so much. Head coach Rod Sherman of the Orange Lutheran football program. Hey, if you haven't already, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and we thank you for joining us on the Cannon Sports Podcast. We will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and follow on Instagram at Cannon Sports, TikTok at Cannon Sports Official, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs.